Welcome to Northwest Moto Garage. Recently I came out to the shop and noticed my forks are leaking fluid from the seals. So time to replace those. And we're also gonna be going to Race Tech and getting our springs for our correct rider weight. We got our parts from Rocky Mountain ATV MC. We got these from Pro X and from Race Tech there. We will also be doing the shock spring. So let's get you onto the helmet here and we'll get after it. Now for tools, you're gonna need some common hand tools, picks, screwdrivers, things like that. But specialty tools that you'll need to pick up, we have our fork cap wrench here. Comes with the cartridge slot there. This is a dampen rod holder. You'll have your seal drivers and your seal bullet. This is all size and make specific, so make sure you type in your bike manufacturer into Rocky Mountain and pick yourself up those tools. We're gonna be working today on a 2008 CRF 450. These are SHOWA forks. Most forks that are of the same brand are gonna be very similar, especially your 250 and 450 guys. Your KYBs, your WPs, that's gonna be a bit different. You're gonna wanna watch a different video, but for your SHOWA guys, you're in the right place. So I'm gonna skip the boring part of taking off the forks, but I will see you guys in a second with it on the vise. Okay, we've got our fork mounted up in our vise. This is the Motion Pro pivot vise. This is specifically designed for shocks and for forks. You don't need this. You can use a standard bench vise with maybe some soft jaws, but if you're gonna be doing these a lot, I'd highly recommend this pivot vise. All right, so first step is let's bleed off any pressure that could be in our fork. Next, we'll record where our suspension settings are by backing out how many clicks we have. 22 clicks for our compression. Now this is the nice thing about this pivot vise, because it can swing freely like this, so we can get to the other side of the fork quite easily. We'll go ahead and record now our rebound. We have 8 clicks for our rebound. Now we can go ahead and get this oil drained on out of here. This vise comes with a nice little tray down here to keep messes to a minimum. This is where we'll take our cap wrench here. Fits on the end of this guy, give it a pop, and she'll break free. Once that's loose enough, we can go ahead and just unthread it with our hand. We'll start seeing some oil pouring out of here. So we can just go ahead and let that drain for a minute. Meanwhile, I'm just gonna go ahead and get this bolt broken free here. So we're not able to remove this quite yet because it's under tension. Let's go ahead and get this sealed back up again. We'll go ahead and get our tray out of the way. And down in here, I just have a trash can with some trash, but also we have some absorbent pads at the bottom to soak up any of this oil. Now this is where our dampen rod holder comes into play. Let's go ahead and pivot this up. So we're gonna be grabbing up here by the lug, forcing down our fork chamber. That way we can jam in this holder. And that just gives us now the ability to take this off the rest of the way. We'll grab our 17mm and just pop that guy off. So now let's go ahead and raise this back up. Again, we're just gonna compress, release our holder, and now our inner chamber is able to be removed from the rest of our fork assembly. You have some residual oil and our fork spring coming out of there. It sounds like I hear our adjustment rod as well. Now the spring that came out is the spring that we are swapping out. This is what can be adjusted for your rider weight and a little bit of how you ride, but mainly this is for your hold up here for your weight. All right, so now with this horizontal, we're gonna pull off these seals that are damaged. First, our dust seal here. We'll grab our pick and we'll get out the inner locking ring, like that. At this point, now that this is all free, we can use this like a slide hammer action and get the rest of the seals out. Just like that. Now the culprit really for our fork seal leaking is this inner oil seal here. Now our new Pro X kit does come with new bushings as well as seals, so we can go ahead and toss these. You're gonna hold on to this ring. You can go ahead and toss your retaining ring and your dust seal. All right, now we can go ahead and test our dampen rod here. We're gonna compress it fully and let it rebound on its own. And what we're looking for is that it was able to extend completely before coming to a stop. Let's check that by pulling on the bottom here. Oh, see, we're able to actually pull it out a good inch or so. So this will need to be rebled. Let's do that next. Okay, so now we got our dampen assembly in our vise. That's where this slot comes in on our wrench here from Motion Pro. Just go ahead and break that free and spin it off. All right, so at this point, it's all the way unthreaded. You can't just grab and pull that out. So a little tip, is to actually push from the bottom of the dampen rod here, and you'll see it pushes this assembly up and out on its own. There we go. And we can just set this on the table. Now at this point, we're just gonna drain our oil and get this whole assembly nice and cleaned up so that way we can reassemble. Okay, so now we have everything cleaned up, ready for reassembly, and this is the point where you're really gonna want a service manual. Each bike has a certain level and procedure that you're gonna want for your fork fluid and how to assemble, how to pump, how to bleed, all of this. Now I use my manuals from eManual Online. They've got a subscription-based service, they've got a bimanual service. Even myself, with having done several suspension rebuilds, I still get a manual for each specific bike because there's always gonna be different specs that each fork requires. All right, so having said that, we're gonna start with our dampen rod completely extended. We're gonna fill up our chamber with fork oil. Now I'm using Shock Therapy light 5-weight oil here from AMSOIL. And for my specific application, we're gonna be doing 187 milliliters. Now it says to pump this rod up and down slowly several times to get all the air bled out of here. So we're gonna go ahead and lift up on it, and it's very easy for me to lift up on this right now. And as we come back down, we'll see if you can hear it. Lots of air bubbles in there that it's trying to sort out, and that's all we're doing right now. We're just trying to bleed this whole system, raising it up and down. All right, so I've probably gone up and down about 20 times with this rod, and I don't feel any sort of hesitation or skips or bubbles, and I certainly don't hear any either. So now we're gonna extend our rod all the way down, and we're gonna make sure that we have an adequate amount of oil left in our chamber. Now to check that height, you see here, there's a bit of a lip right here on the inside of this chamber and on the outside. We're gonna use this screwdriver like a dipstick. We're gonna slide it all the way down until it stops. And it stops right on that shoulder. Now when we pull it out, we're gonna measure our fork oil height here, and this needs to be at least 42 to 47 millimeters tall. So we're gonna go ahead and grab our calipers here and measure where the oil is. We're only at about 17 millimeters, so we're going to go ahead and fill this up a bit more until it's at the right height. All right, we are right at 46 millimeters. That's perfect. So now we can go ahead and grab our damper assembly here, and we're going to want to force this in with the rod completely extended. This will be a little stiff and difficult to do, but that is perfectly normal. We're going to go ahead and force it all the way down until those threads make contact, and then we can start to thread it back in. Once it seats, I just have to give her a little bit more. So now in order to bleed what we just did there, we're going to want to pump this rod down here 3 to 4 inches at a time, several times. Okay, so I've just spent the last 30 minutes trying to figure this out, and I think we finally have an answer. So I put the cartridge in, tried to bleed it, and every single time, no matter what, that rod would never return down. So I've got it reset here. Let me show you. It starts off good. This rod is fully extended, but now we're going to lift it up to try and bleed it. It's already not wanting to return all the way down. Wanting to stop right there and pull down. We come up a little further, and it's not wanting to go all the way down. We come up even further than that, and it's dropping. And every time it's even less. Now watch this. We're going to pull it all the way down, and it retracts back up. I'm like, what is going on? I read the service manual. I watched a bunch of videos. Nothing I was doing was seeming to fix this. So what I ended up doing was getting on the phone with Race Tech, and their technicians are so knowledgeable in all different types of suspension brands and cartridges. They said, we've seen this before many times, especially in older bikes. The seal that's down here for the shaft or the seal that's up here actually in the compression cartridge, one of those two is bad. I recommend replacing both just in case it's one or the other. You can't really test it out. So they've actually got them in stock, and they've got some pretty good instructions they were able to tell me over the phone. That's going to take a while. They're going to be shipped here. We're going to make a separate video on this, but just for the sake of this video, we're going to carry on with the cartridge just like this, so that way we can get everything assembled and we can close out this video. So now we'll transition over here to our Pro X bushing and seals. Open up this kit here. I'm just gonna lay out everything that in order as it goes onto the bike. First, we're gonna start off with our dust seal, our retaining ring, then our oil seal. This aluminum ring we had taken off originally. Then we've got our inner seal, and lastly, our outer seal. Now what's pretty cool about this kit is it comes with the protection ring to replace this guy. Basically what that does is protect your fork guard from rubbing all the finish off of here. So we're gonna go ahead and replace that first. Pretty simple here, just gonna grab a screwdriver, pop that guy off and go in the trash. And on with our new protection ring, it just snaps right into place. Now when adding on your seals, this is where our seal bullet's gonna come into play. Go ahead and pop that on the end there. I always have a little cap full of fork oil here, just so we can make sure everything's lubed up before it goes on. Starting off with our dust seal. Again, put a nice coat there on the inner lip of it. And I even like to put some out here so it pushes into the barrel a little easier. We're gonna make sure the spring portion is facing down as it goes on. And that just slips right on. Then our retaining ring, our oil seal, the groove, the gap is gonna be facing up in towards, so this is where the bullet comes into play. There's a sharp groove right here. And if you were just to force this seal on, you will most likely damage it. So this seal bullet just comes right over top of it, makes it so that way this install doesn't damage anything, and you're right back where you started before. Now let's take off our seal bolt. We won't need that anymore, and we can put on our metal ring, our inner bushing with some oil, and then our outer bushing. Okay, so that's the assembly all done up there. Ready to go back into the top of the fork leg. Let's go ahead and oil up where all these bushings and seals will go. And nice and easily, we can just slide it right on in. Just like that. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and push up our inner bushing first. I do prefer to hammer these in one at a time. It's a little bit easier on the components. So we'll grab our Motion Pro seal driver, use the locking ring there, and we're just pushing that into place. That's done there. Now we'll get our oil seal up here. And we'll drive this into place. Just like that. Okay, so now our snap ring can go in, our retaining ring. You just put one corner in it at first, circle it around, and then with the screwdriver, just make sure it's seated in place. You'll hear that click. Push it on multiple sides, make sure it's fully seated. Lastly, we can slide up our dust seal. This just keeps out a majority of the dirt to keep things as clean as possible. Gonna check for some smoothness here coming in and out. Easy peasy. Now we'll go ahead and wipe off our excess oil. And that is our fork leg completed with our seals and bushings. Let's move on to adding our spring and checking our spring preload. Okay, now when swapping out your springs here, I'm a little bit heavier than what the stock weight recommends. So that's why we got this spring here from Race Tech. They come with shims, that way you make sure you get your preload just right. Now, your preload, nothing to be super concerned about. Basically all it is, you wanna make sure that your spring is compressed just a little bit when it's in the fork. You don't want it to be slopping back and forth, and you don't want too much preload on it as well. Race Tech recommends 3 to 4 millimeters depending on your bike manufacturer. So let's go ahead and slide this guy into the fork. We're also going to slide in our dampening assembly, just like that, until it bottoms out on the spring. Now we're gonna come over here. Since we want the exact same measurement every time, we're gonna make sure that this is butted up against the bottom, and this is sticking out just like that. Now you're gonna wanna pick a reference point that you can measure before and after the spring has been preloaded. For me, it's pretty simple here. I'm just gonna use the top of this and the bottom of that. Quick little shout out to SHOWA's tools. They're the ones that got our surfacing stone. If you saw that video, we're now affiliated with those guys. Go check out SHOWA's tools for any of your precision equipment. All right, so a measurement here is 106.9 millimeters there. All right, so now we can go ahead and push this closed and we can seal this up so we can put some tension on our spring. Before we do that, ProX provides a new O-ring for our adjuster here, so we're just gonna swap that out. And just like the removal process, we're gonna use our holder here, bring this down and clamp that guy in place. A little bit difficult now with that rod wanting to retract back in, but we got it. You're gonna wanna slide back in your adjuster rod here. This is directional. You'll wanna make sure that you turn this until it seats and is able to go fully inside that rod. Just like that, and it can push inside. And we'll just thread this guy on. You want to make sure that your locking nut here is threaded all the way in on the rod as far as it can go. And when you finish threading this all the way on, you're going to want to see a gap there. So now we'll just grab our wrench and we're going to back off this jam nut until it touches up against our adjuster and torque that to 16 foot-pounds. Let's release the rod. And now we'll just thread this down and torque it to 51 foot-pounds. All right, so with that spring compressed now, we can take that measurement again and get our preload number. We're going to resimulate it just the way we had it before by pushing our fork leg all the way up against the bottom there. Grab our calipers and take this measurement again. All right, so we are at 103.2. That is almost 4 millimeters. That's perfect. That falls within that 3 to 4 millimeter range. We can actually go ahead and get these sealed up. I like to put these at an angle and get a rag jammed in there so I can still get some fluid in there. So the manual calls for about 405 milliliters of fluid. We're going to pour that straight down into our reservoir. Just like that. And this is why I like to put it at an angle, because you can actually tip your container all the way over so you can get all the contents out instead of it being straight up and down and you're kind of having to butt up against your damping rod here. All right, and no bleeding necessary for that. We just put it upright. Go ahead and thread our cap on down. Now, if you actually have one of these fork cap adapters, the manual actually gives a torque spec for this. It says 21 foot-pounds. Now, if you've got something that's a cap over top, the actual is going to be 25 foot-pounds. Either way, you can even just give her a good yank, and it should seat just fine. But since we have our Motion Pro tool here, we might as well do it the way it says. Just like that. We were 22 in from all the way out. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And we were 8 clicks in from all the way out on our rebound. Now, I'm sure these are going to change now that we have the proper springs in here, but this is a good starting point. All right, with that, the rebuild is done. We've swapped out our springs here. I went ahead and did the other fork. We're gonna put these back in the box here and save those for if maybe we need them or for when the bike is resold to someone else. Now, for the last part of this video, we're gonna be swapping out the spring here on our shock. So let's get that pulled off the bike. All right, so we've got our rear shock mocked up in here and our Motion Pro spring compressor. Now, all we have to do is crank this down, remove our circlip. When we crank down on this nut here, it compresses the spring and exposes our circlip down here. We just pop that guy up with a screwdriver, take it out, and then we can relieve the pressure. There we go, and completely loose. So now we can just slide our spring right off. Now all we have to do is get our new Race Tech spring and slide her on down. Put our retaining collar back on there, put it back in the vise. Okay, we'll just bring this nut on down. So now we've got our ring groove exposed here. We'll just put the snap ring back on down on top of it here. Make sure that's snapped into place all the way around. Once it's set, you can go ahead and just relieve the pressure. Just like that, we've got our spring swapped out. All right, so all that's left to do is get this sucker installed in the bike, check our sag, make sure that's good on our preload for this guy, and we are done. All right, and there we have it. Shock's back on the bike. That blue looks so good in there. We don't have the forks back on yet because the seals need to still get replaced, but I will be making that video as soon as they arrive. And so with that, if you guys have leaky fork seals, I highly recommend Pro X. These guys are genuine Japanese replacement parts, basically OEM. Pretty hard to go wrong with anything Pro X. And if you guys haven't dialed in your suspension yet for Rider Way, I highly suggest you guys pick up your springs. They're only about 300 bucks if you want to get the front and the back, 150 each side. Easy to do. I just showed you how to do it. Race Tech not only makes it simple, but they're very, very knowledgeable and will walk you through the whole process, even if you don't understand the instructions they send along. Lastly, if you guys need some tools for your suspension work, Motion Pro is the best way to go. All the stuff I'll link down in the description below. That's going to be our Rocky Mountain affiliate link. Anytime you guys purchase something from Rocky Mountain after using that, we get a small little kickback. I'm very grateful for that. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Ride safe and live mud up.